All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Passion Podcast. My name is Tyler, and we are joined by a very special guest today. She's a junior studying electrical engineering with a minor in sustainability. She has a huge passion for solar energy and has started to venture into the aerospace field. She has an extremely exciting, diverse, and awesome background that we're going to get to talk about and hear about a little bit today. And she has a huge passion for inspiring other women in STEM. Her name is Nicole, and we have the pleasure of having her join us today. Nicole, how are you?
I'm doing good. Excited to be out of this chair. Zoom University, you know how it is.
I do. I think we're getting close to the end, but yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a ride for sure. The chair feels like it gets more and more uncomfortable the more days that go by.
Yeah, sinking into it
I know.
slowly.
Yeah, slowly but surely. I feel like I'm gonna need a new one soon. It's getting its use for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll hop right into it. Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Nicole Swan?
So that's such a loaded
I
question.
know it's a tough one. It's a tough one to start out with.
I'm a little nervous. Is this like a tech interview for a company? but um so basically I have always had a passion for the environment. A funny story I like to tell when people ask me to tell them about myself is in 7th grade we had this science fair, and in the science fair we got to choose whatever project we wanted to do, and I decided I was going to prove climate change. I don't know where I got that from.
7-year-old,
Yeah, I was like,
big
oh,
ambitions.
I can do this, sure. And like other people were doing like the Mentos Coke bottles, like all that stuff. And obviously, that experiment probably wasn't valid, but that kind of just showed my early interest at like the environment and helping animals and things like that. I was really big like animal nerd growing up, and I always thought I was going to be a vet my whole life until my senior year of high school. I even applied to like vet school, like pre-vet programs, and then I applied to electrical engineering, and I was like, where am I gonna go? And I realized that with energy, I can make a greater impact on the world. So that's a little bit of like how I really got interested in solar energy and learning about why I wanted to help change it and working in that field.
Yeah, awesome. What was your first what was your first experience and exposure to STEM in general? When did that really start?
Um, I've always been a little bit exposed to it. My dad is a CS. He did CS. I was gonna say he's a CS major, but he's out of college. um, so he kind of pushed me away from STEM, honestly, because he's such a hard worker. So he was always like coding on his computer, staring at the computer screen, blah blah blah. And I was like, I don't ever want to do that. And that's kind of what my like impression of STEM was at that point. I was like, oh, it's you have to be this genius that like sits and types on a computer all day. So I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But I really got exposed in high school when I had a couple friends on the robotics team, and I was like, you guys are nerds. Like, I don't want to go on the robotics team. And they're like, come on, just like see how it is. Like, we need more girls. And I was like, okay. So I like walked in and I was like, okay, yeah, I need to be here. So I just kind of saw like the heavy machineries, and everybody was like so into it. And I feel like in high school, it's kind of hard to find like a place where you can unapologetically like be yourself. And everyone there was just like so nerdy, so into what they were doing. And I was like, yeah, like you don't feel bad for being like, oh, I want to talk about this really cool thing or like whatever. So I really just wanted to be in that community. So that's kind of where I got my start.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I did a little bit of STEM in high school. Most people don't know this about me because I was a business kid all of college, and it's a completely different arena. And we talked a little bit about this beforehand, but I got to see a little bit about the unfortunate barriers that there are for women in STEM. I got only the tip of the iceberg. I got to see it just a little bit because I was just kind of fresh into STEM. I was just at the starting stages of it. But obviously, have a little bit more experience in that. Take me through a little bit. Talk to me through those barriers. Any personal experiences you kind of had with that, and how you kind of tackle that.
Yeah. So starting at a young age, I think the issue with, I guess, women going into STEM is you don't really see a lot of people like you. I think that's changed a lot now. I think there are a lot of great role models, and there were great role models, but they weren't showcased. Like, we always learned about all these Albert Einstein and Elon Musk and all these like really like prominent figures that were all male. And so you didn't really talk about all these amazing people like Ada Lovelace and like so many more women scientists that have made contributions for some weird reason. So I think it's really hard to imagine yourself in a certain career or field when you don't see somebody that looks like you that's kind of already done it. And I don't think that's like something you actively think. I think it's like more intrinsic. You kind of just notice, oh well, like that's not where my like people are, like that's not what my kind of people usually do. And so it makes a larger barrier for you to go after STEM careers. And that goes for minorities too, right? Like if you don't see somebody that looks like you're like, well, why would I do it then? You don't feel accepted. So that was like a really big barrier for me growing up. um I think also the attitudes about who an engineer is, it's always like, oh, they sit in their little hole in the wall and they don't talk to anyone and they're like super smart and like they have no communication skills. And I talked to Tyler about this a little before, but we were talking about how I was actually business president of my robotics team for a while before I went into engineering. And so I was like, well, I'm talkative, like I'm girly, I'm feminine, like I can't be a STEM major. Like, no, that's not me. Like, I always just thought it had to be these super, like, smart, genius people that, like, knew the answers off the top of their heads. But then I realized that with hard work, and I had a mentor in high school who was a woman. She was the I was trying to say professor, like teacher of the class, of the engineering classes, and her name is Miss Wendell. And all the boys would like not take anything from her, and she kind of showed me that like, okay, you have to be like very confident, you have to be proud, you have to speak up for yourself. So she really paved the way for me and made me believe in myself. And so I think that mentorship has to continue. But I guess one of the weird things I faced early on when I kind of realized it was going to be different for me was in high school. There was a guy who decided to send pictures to me and harass a bunch of other women on the team. And that was like, I was like 16 dealing with that already. And like, I had trusted him. We'd like been friends, like really good friends, because he was my co-president on the team. He was the engineering president. So I had to go through all the work of like, well, you're not on my team anymore. Like I had to kick him off, like stand up for all the other women on the team, um, and just like make it clear to the other men on the team that this behavior isn't acceptable and things like that. And from then on, like there were no issues on the team or anything like that. And I'm not saying everybody will have those issues and things like that, but it was definitely kind of like shocking to be like, oh, this is the behave, like this is the vibes I guess I was getting at such like an early age, and I had to deal with that and then be the only president of like a 40-person team. So that was just an interesting experience that I had early on.
What motivates you in moments like that? To I guess to continue to battle through those. What motivates you to continue?
Oh, I want to prove them wrong. I
Yes.
want to prove them wrong. Like I'm a very strong, independent woman. And so when people say that to me, it's like very easy for me to be like, okay, like, see you in a couple years. I mean, and then I was a NASA intern. So I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what more I can do than continue to do that. But I even had a couple years ago, an example freshman year, I had a sexist professor, which was an interesting experience. And he was talking trash about me to another student behind my back who was my friend. And he was like, oh, little Nicole takes a little bit for the light bulb to go off, like things like that. And I really had to, I brought it up to my counselor. Like I just made a side comment and I was like, no, I don't want to report it. Like it doesn't affect me. You know, I was like, it didn't bring me down. Like I was like, I don't care. I don't want to deal with it. And she was like, Nicole, this isn't about you. And that was like something I needed to be told. And she was like, there are other freshman women in that class that maybe don't feel as like on their 2 feet as you do, or don't feel as confident in themselves as you do. And she's like, and it's also about this professor is showing men in your class how they can treat women in industry. And that like really struck a chord with me. I was like, okay, I'll take it up. I'll talk to whoever you want me to talk to and stuff.
Yeah.
So you just have to be really like strong-willed and like not let it get to you and let those moments push you forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think one of the most powerful things you can do is just you know, and I see it even just through your Instagram and like your social media, like you're open, you're raw about it, and like you said, you're breaking stereotypes that are out there, and you're proving things not through, you know, words, but just through actions. Like you just keep going, and that's a really powerful thing. And I think, like you said, it's carrying the torch for people, you know, a little bit behind you. I think people think and I talk about this all the time. I think people think that you need to be a ton older to inspire people, and they go, "Oh, you're a couple steps ahead of some people in high school, but you're inspiring people in high school through, you know, through what you're doing and just putting yourself out there and continuing that." So awesome. Well, you mentioned it, you hinted at it briefly, but I do want to talk about your NASA internship. Um, Take me through just how that came to be, what that experience was like for you. I gotta know. I've never met someone before that's worked or interned at all for NASA. Talk to me through that a little bit.
Okay. Well, yes, it was a pretty surreal experience. It's still weird to talk about. It happened like about a year ago now. And so I'm always like, man, I peaked already. I'm like, how I already achieved my goals. What am I gonna do now? But I work in the solar defect lab on campus. I got that job freshman year, but it wasn't always just like a straight line. Like a funny story I like to tell is freshman year, I worked in a lab not doing anything solar or like electrical engineering related, and I just stalked. I didn't talk to anyone. I was just like stocking like different like supplies, and I would like write down all the chemicals that needed to be thrown out, like things like that. Like I wasn't really involved at all. And then I kind of was networking within the lab, and I'd made some friends in that lab. And I was like, hey, so do you know anything about the solar lab on campus? Like, kind of like slid it in. And I was like, that's kind of where I want to be. Like, I was like, and she was like, oh, yeah, I have a really good friend. I'll introduce you to her. And then from there, my career in solar has skyrocketed. I got the job there. I worked there for free for a couple months, just kind of to prove like I'm here to do work. I'm interested because it's sometimes kind of tricky with undergrads. You don't know, like you're still learning to balance your time. I'm sure you remember that. You're still learning
Oh
how to
yes.
life. So I think they're a little cautious. And then I was kind of upfront, and I was like, hey, I want to work here this summer. Can I do that like freshman year? And they were like, oh yeah, we'll pay you for that. And I was like, okay. So that's when I started getting paid to work there, and that was like my dream. And then I was just working there, and I got an email from my lab PI one day, and it was talking about this lab. There was like a bunch of stuff, and I just like opened the email super quick on my phone, like I was in a class, like I should have opened it, but I was like, what is this email? And I thought she was trying to send me to like another lab. Like it was like, oh, this lab on campus is doing these things, and I was like, those are interesting things, but I got kind of sad because I was like, she's trying to send me
Want to get
away.
rid of you?
Like she doesn't like me. And then I read at the bottom, and it's signed like my boss's name at NASA, and then it says like NASA Glenn, like photovoltaics branch, and I was like, oh, and I was like freaking out because it was a letter from him to her. So she just forwarded me the email casually. Like it was just a letter. It was like, hey, I'm looking for an undergrad, like for my NASA lab. Do you have one? And then she was like, oh yeah, I have one. And because I was the only undergrad in the lab, so at least I didn't have any competition. And so I called him up, and I was just like, hey, I want to know more about your background, which was true. I did want to know that, but I kind of established that connection with my boss at the NASA branch. And then I didn't hear anything for like 4 months. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll apply. And I like put in my application, whatever. And then suddenly I get an email, and I was like, oh, it's going to be a rejection letter. Like, because I didn't really interview like or anything. And it was just like, oh, congratulations, you start at NASA January 8th. And then I just like threw my phone, was crying. I'm getting emotional thinking about it because it's just like one of those moments, you know, when you've done it, like all this hard work that you've put in, all the struggles you've overcome, you're like, oh man, this can't be real. So for me, a little like I was a sophomore, so that's like so young, I guess, to have that opportunity, but I've been working I don't know if we can cuss, my butt off. But it was just so surreal. And so it was scary though, because I'm from Arizona my whole life. Like I lived in Awatuki, so like 20-minute drive away, and I lived in the dorms, but still, if anything went wrong, parents down the street, like things like that. And so they were like, "Oh, you have to move to Cleveland, Ohio in the dead of winter." And I was like, "Winter? I don't." Interesting. So literally my Christmas list was like snow boots, snow gloves,
All the
like,
stuff you do not have by living here. Yeah.
oh yeah, I was like, I have none of this. So, um, but I ended up moving out. They threw us in like a random group chat, like the NASA interns, and they were like, "Oh, find housing," and I was like, "Okay." So I actually had to take a semester off of school to do my internship. So I did like it's called a co-op in the spring semester. So everything worked out fine. I know people are scared to do that, but it's like you can put your scholarships off a month. You just like tell them, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this semester. I'm working at a job. Here's proof." And they say, "Okay, you'll have the funding next semester." Like I still get 8 semesters no matter when the 8 semesters are. I think that's just like a tidbit of like advice if anybody was thinking of doing that.
That's good.
But so I move out there, literally best experience of my entire life. I'll talk about it forever. I met one of my best friends who I lived with. She was awesome. So she was from Alabama. And that was hilarious because we were like driving in snow and ice, and she had never experienced that either. And she was just like, "I'm scared." And I'm like, "It's okay." So, some of the best, like, you would think the people that work there are cocky, right? And like all MIT and all like these like high end universities and like people that don't want to talk, but they were like so down to earth, so nice, so humble. Like all of us were like, I don't know how we got here. Like that was like the common thread. So um it was amazing experience. I worked on something that's going to the moon in 2024, I think. So that's really exciting. And I was doing like solar testing and doing some other projects on the side and stuff. So
Was there like a moment or two when you were there that it was kind of like, oh my god, I'm doing this right now? Like, was there a moment you can remember where it was just like almost like out of body experience?
okay, every day. Like I'm not even being dramatic, like every single
Mm.
day. Because we had gotten a routine. They had like a mini Starbucks there. And so me and all my friends would meet there in the mornings. And it's like I was never more motivated to wake up like in my entire life. Like it's one of those experiences every single day. I was like, okay, I'm getting up early. Like I was so excited to go. And then you'd work, you'd have lunch with your friends, and then you'd work some more on these like amazing things. And then all of my friends would meet at the gym after and just goof around. Like we weren't like really like hard working out. And then we'd always be like, "Oh, where do we want to like go get dinner?" or like something like that. Like it was just such a surreal experience, like that. I was just every single day was amazing. But of course it was in 2020, so COVID hit halfway through my internship. So that was interesting to deal with. They started giving us Fridays off, like randomly. Not like off, but they would like say like work from home. And we were like, "Yeah." Like we were like working from home, cool. Like and we thought it was a good thing. And then one day it was like, "Hey, you should take your home stuff because you're like your stuff at your desk home because I don't know if you're ever going to return to center." And that moment was like heartbreaking because you've worked so hard, you've moved out here, you're like accomplishing your dreams, and then it's like, well, this thing has come along. And luckily all of us got to keep our jobs, and NASA was super accommodating. They were like, you can stay in Ohio and work from here, you can go home and work from there if you want, like you can quit and we'll still pay you if you need to deal with stuff. Like they were so accommodating. But I ended up moving home to Arizona, and just like teleworking the rest of the summer.
So cool. That is so cool. Wow. That is awesome. That is really, really cool. Well, awesome. And I want to shift gears a little bit now. And you had mentioned this. This is a question that I hadn't had on the agenda yet. And you brought you made such a good point, and I have to mention it, about being multifaceted. We want to discuss beyond just STEM, because you are not just STEM. So talk to me about some of the things, passions wise, just things outside. Who are you outside of STEM? I guess is more or less what I'm going to ask now.
Yeah, so a lot of my platform you've mentioned is really based on being multifaceted. Like I've said a million times, like you always have this, I guess, idea of what an engineer is in your mind, but there's so many women and people that are just like breaking that stereotype. So something that a lot of people don't know, you can see right behind me is my guitar.
It is.
um I was like, either another career choice with me for me was Broadway. In high school I was a theater kid, so I kind of lived a Hannah Montana life. Sometimes I would like run to rehearsal, do my scene, run back to robotics, like start the meeting and stuff. So that was like really fun, and my teachers in both were like really accommodating of it, because that is my passion, like acting, singing, musicals. I love like all of that. And freshman year, I actually performed at a bunch of ASU events, like Coachella, Vera opening, like a couple other ones, like open mic nights they would put on. So I'm really excited for this pandemic to be over so I can get my guitar back out and start performing again.
That is
So
so
that's
cool.
a huge passion of mine. Yeah.
Awesome. What was the best, I guess probably in high school, theater play that you were in?
I was in freshman year this play called, it was a musical called Pinkalicious. So it was a children's musical, which is why I really liked it, because everybody, I feel like when you do like big serious musicals, like everyone's really stressed out, but it was kind of like low stakes but like super high reward, because like the kids would come out afterwards and they like hug you and they're like super happy to be there, and it's like based on these books they love. So like that's always an experience I think of, and it was super fun.
You can do it all. You really were living the Hannah Montana lifestyle. That's
I
awesome.
was living out my real life.
That is awesome. All right. I always end the show asking two questions. We are the Passion Podcast, so I always like to ask, what is passion to you?
That is a very interesting question.
It's a loaded one.
Passion to me is, I don't want to say, I feel like there's an answer where you can say it's like what gets you up in the morning. But it's like, I feel like sometimes engineering doesn't get me up in the morning. Like if I'm going to be honest, every day I'm not like so excited to just like sit in my Zoom lecture and do class. Like honestly, but it's knowing what I can do later. Like my passion is like my future self, if that kind of makes sense. Like I know I want to do ABC, and I know I want to maybe be an astronaut one day, and like just the thought of like maybe reaching that goal is like what pushes me forward. Like I want to better myself so I can have that opportunity, or I want to better myself so I can, I don't know, like go on vacations to nice places and travel. It's like things like that is like, I guess life experience is like what passion is, I think, and what people, what who people want to be in the future. I feel like that's what you like creates passion. I know that was kind of like a weird roundabout way.
It's good. No, it's good. I mean, it's a very loaded question because we can take it so many different ways, which is why I like to ask people, because it does. I think every episode I've done of this, every time I ask that question, there's a silence for a couple of seconds.
It's like the thought.
Yeah, I see the gears turning, and I love it. I'm like, it's raw. It's like they got to think on the top of their head. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about passion? But yeah, fantastic answer, and I would agree with you 100% on that. Last question I have for you, Nicole, for people who have, some interest in STEM, they might want to go down that career trajectory. I know it's a very broad category when we talk about STEM in general, but what's a couple pieces of advice you have for them and someone who's potentially looking into pursuing a career down that route?
So something interesting me and Tyler were talking about earlier actually was you do not have to be a STEM major if you're interested in STEM. So that's a piece of advice. At my internship, there were people that were studying art to do the art for them. There were people doing like media design, and they would do like there's like a NASA magazine, and it's like things like that, and communications. So there's a ton of people needed to run businesses like SpaceX, Boeing, NASA. They need people that aren't engineers, or else everything would fall apart probably. So um, that's my first piece of advice. If you're passionate about STEM, science, space, you can find a company that has those things, and you can do what you're good at, or like what you want to do for those companies. Another piece of advice is really mentorship is really important. Finding people that you can look up to, whether it be on social media, or a professor, or a teacher, or a boss even, and keeping connected with them. Like, even I returned from my NASA internship, I got like all my mentors in my life t-shirts, and I wrote them like just like long letters of like, thank you for making me who I am. And I think that's really important, is thanking those people in your life that have really made you who you are, and have propelled you and pushed you to get these jobs and go these places. So definitely just like being very grateful for those people. And I guess the last piece of advice is like super cheesy, but the sky is the limit. I mean, I never thought I would ever be in the aerospace industry. I thought I was just going to work for a solar company and do that. But then I suddenly got this opportunity and dipped my foot in, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to be here. I love it here. And so it's like trying new things and new industries and new places to find where you want to be. And you'll like know when you know. So it's like falling in love. People say, you know when you know. It's like that's how it is when you find where you can make your impact.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And just like falling in love, you can't find it unless you don't put yourself out there. That's always what I tell people. Where do I find my passion? I don't know. I really don't know where you're going to find your passion, but I know that you won't find it unless you take those chances. You put yourself out there, and you'll sometimes find it in the most, the most unlikely of places, like you said, and like you did. Life is pretty unpredictable, but as long as you put yourself out there, I feel like, you'll have a good chance of figuring it out. So, awesome, Nicole. Well, thank you for joining us for the show. She came with the fire outfit, and she brought some fire answers. For those watching the YouTube, they can appreciate it. For those watching our Spotify, just know she brought the fit. She made it happen today. So thank you for coming on, Nicole. We really appreciate it. If you guys want to follow her story, we're going to link all of her social medias in our bio and stuff like that. So continue along her story. Again, it's inspiring stuff. She really is putting out content that is raw and real. And I know it is inspiring a lot of people, because like we've talked about, people who are younger and the younger generation have to have people to look up to see, I can see myself doing that because other people are. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for entertaining us for 20 minutes or so here today. And thank you all for watching episode number 5 of the Passion Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for more. And we also have a link if you want to join us and talk about your passions. We're always looking for more people to talk about this stuff constantly. It's a great time. So go ahead and fill that out if you're interested. But thank you all again for watching episode number 5 of the Passion Podcast, and we will see you soon.